This is part one of a three-part series. Be sure that you watch all the parts so you don't miss any of this important information.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad! You keep digging! You'll peg me one day.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is OAB with Dig Deep Crypto, letting you know again that yes, this is the right place and this is the right time. Back in September of 2020, they had a great discussion, some great dialogue about will the digital dollar, stablecoins, and CBDCs be able to coexist. So with this part one, we're going to listen to some industry experts from all over the digital currency space and software technology. We're going to listen to them discuss this very issue. Now, this is probably one of the most important projects that I have put together here on this page. Circle is a company that partnered up with Coinbase and they created the USDC stablecoin. Here, Jeremy Allaire, who is with Circle, they're going to talk about how stablecoins and CBDCs can, or even if they will coexist. We're going to listen to their conversation. I'm going to break it down a bit. I'm hoping that you guys are able to grab what you need so that you feel more confident about which projects that you decide to invest in going for the next 5 to 10 years from now. Let's go ahead and get this video started.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Allaire, and welcome to The Money Movement, a show where we explore the issues and ideas driving this brave new world of digital currency and blockchains. Today, we're going to be talking about digital dollar stablecoins and central bank digital currencies. Really excited today to explore these issues on The Money Movement. We are joined by Visa's head of crypto, Guy Sheffield, Neha Narula, the director of MIT's Digital Currency Initiative, which is an institute that has been leading research and development in crypto, digital currency, and now central bank digital currency models, and Robert Bench, aka Bob Bench, AVP at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, and a key contributor and collaborator on the future of digital currency with the Federal Reserve. Actually, maybe we'll start with you, Bob. And I remember at one point a meeting I had at the Federal Reserve in the not too distant past, and I met someone whose title was product manager for cash. And I thought, that's pretty cool. There's a product manager for cash, and cash is a product of the central bank. And most people don't really think of it that way. Like, you know, we've got products that we sell as companies, but central banks have a product, it's called cash. So what's the role of cash as a product in the United States? And then, you know, how might that inform how the Fed thinks about digital cash?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was surprised too when I came to the Fed from Circle, right? And, you know, we had a lot of kind of product questions that Circle's great PMs thought about. The Fed PMs think the same way. What do our customers need? What's their use case? How do we make this easier for them to use, more accessible? So you think about just currency generally, right? For a currency's goal is to be a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. And cash being the original form of currency here in the US, that's what we want it to be first and foremost. And our cash office is really great at knowing their product and knowing their customers. So what is our product, right? So there's about 2 trillion of our product out there, right? In US of a $20 trillion money supply. Of that $2 trillion, we have about 1.4 trillion or so of that that's hundreds. A decent amount of that, which is overseas. And then the remaining is smaller denominations. Our economists also and product officers also understand how that money moves, where it moves, and why it's moving where it is. And so when we think about trying to build a cash alternative, certainly not a cash replacement, but what would a prototype cash alternative look like? One of the key questions for us is, are we thinking more medium of exchange, or are we thinking more store of value? And that's one of the critical questions that we needed to think about and bring in the Digital Currency Initiative at MIT to help us think about. Because we think that you can weigh the technology to be more focused on store of value, say having a much more secure platform, or you can have it much more focused on a medium of exchange, which may require higher throughput and faster settlement. And as you know, Jeremy, those are really important technical trade-offs. Yeah. And so when we think about what's the potential goal of a prototype GP CBDC, are we looking for people to have something to store, and is security the ultimate concern? Or do we need it to be fast, right? So you can get a cup of coffee very quickly.
So we got to hear Robert Bench, who was a former worker with Circle, and he went to the Fed of Boston. He said that there's three purposes of currency. That is to be a unit of account, a medium of exchange, or a store of value. So the angle that they're coming to for CBDCs is, which is more important? Is it important for the currency to be extremely secure, like a store of value, or does it need to be faster and have a higher throughput as a medium of exchange? So one would be the medium of exchange, and its backing most likely would be the store of value, and that would probably be the liquidity that the stablecoin is backed by, because stablecoins need to be backed by assets. There's a Pax Gold stablecoin that's backed by actual gold. So the store of value is your liquidity, and your medium of exchange will be your stablecoin.
Yeah, I guess I'll start in. I think you kind of have to break down fiat-backed digital currencies into three parts. It's kind of what type of money is backing it, or collateral. Who is responsible for operating the technology that actually issues and redeems it, and who operates the network that digital currency is transferred over. And so you could start to see the spectrum of design choices that are emerging, where at one end you have these private sector led the leading existing stablecoins like USDC that are backed by treasuries or commercial bank money, issued by fintechs and operated, transferred over public blockchain networks with thousands of nodes that are, validating transactions. And then on the other end, you could imagine a digital currency backed by a central bank reserve, issued where the technology is operated by the central bank to create it, and the network is operated by the central bank. I think there's a lot of room in the middle of options for public and private sector partnerships to be able to back and issue digital currencies and operate the networks that they run on. And so we think more digital currencies will emerge in the future, and they'll land somewhere across that spectrum, and they could potentially coexist or engage in market-based competition for various use cases based upon diverse properties that they can have.
I mean, there's sort of Fedwire money, which is a particular form of electronic money. And then there's Visa electronic money. And today, at least, Visa electronic money has a lot more utility value than Fedwire electronic money, just for everyday kind of stuff. But Fedwire money is like really important for a certain class of very important scaled transactions with a very clear set of controlled, trusted intermediaries, and sort of, it's that interplay.
So again here, we start seeing Kai from Visa, who's the head of crypto at Visa. He's telling us that these digital assets, these digital currencies need to be backed by something. So what is the collateral backing it? And who is responsible for the technology and overseeing its operations? Regarding central banks and digital currencies by CBDCs, they must be backed by a central bank reserve. And the technology is going to be operated by the central bank itself, where they're going to have to create some type of network by the central bank or for the central bank to utilize. to oversee the transactions and the ins and outs of how this money moves. So can CBDCs and stablecoins coexist with each other? It sounds like they can, according to Kai, because he's saying that each will have their own specific values and qualities that the other one doesn't have, which comes to a narrative we're going to see a little bit later on in this video about monies needing to be competitive with each other. And that's kind of what the dollar is now. The fiat money is now. They're in competition with each other. And there's a need to have some type of competition for the economy to stay moving as it has been moving as of right now.
Other thoughts from you guys?
Okay, I was just gonna respond to the security sort of point you made before about open source. You know, it's really surprising. I think sometimes people think because something's out in the open, it means that people are looking at it. There is a very long tail of stuff out there that no one is looking at. And if someone, you know, it's very time consuming actually to audit all of this software, to really break it apart. And there aren't necessarily the right incentives in place to do that yet. You know, I mean, the incentives around open source software is really, really complex. We see things like, you know, bugs in OpenSSL and in really, really core pieces of software, which tons of billion-dollar companies rely on, but it turns out they're being maintained by a couple of people in their spare time. So, you know, I think that there really is this issue with open source software that we need to figure out how to solve. And we're really seeing it in the cryptocurrency world where there's so much money sloshing around, where how do we fund that very deep, important work of doing the auditing, of looking at all the software, of testing it rigorously, of really making sure that it's top notch. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, it's like the bar is so much higher in the technology for digital currency than you know, the kind of protocols that you know, yeah, we can get streaming television and it's great over the internet, but you know, sometimes broadband goes down, and you know, what do? You know, if the internet goes down and you've got digital cash, you know, it's fascinating to watch, obviously, and seeing, you know, a smart contract based stablecoin that people trust, that it's essentially an open API for dollars on the internet, and it's amazing to see what people are doing with it.
Celo is one of those smart contract-based stablecoins that people trust. The World Economic Forum has chosen to trust and will be implemented in over 100 countries in the world. Just wanted to put that in there. Really pay attention to what Jeremy Allaire is saying here, because you're going to see that narratives of 99% of cryptos will not survive come into play in this next statements that he's making, as well as you're going to see that money is going to be lost, and they know that money is going to be lost. So it's so important that you know exactly what you're investing in, and that's what this 3-part series is about. So I want to make sure that you guys know that we're still on track. Stay with me. Stay to the end of this video, stay to the end of the next 2 videos, because you're going to get a great understanding of which monies are going to be able to operate offline in case broadband and internet goes down. You're going to get an understanding of which countries are putting their central bank digital currencies on which softwares. You're going to understand also the way that you can safely keep your money, because without regulations, crypto is very, very risky. It's high risk, high reward. And there's a lot of protocols and things out there now that people are making a lot of money on. But if you are looking to be safe and not trying to lose any money and play the long game, that's what this 3-part series is about. Also, this is not financial advice. This is just financial information.
So, and we've seen hundreds and hundreds of companies innovating on USDC, and like they don't have a relationship with us or Coinbase. It's just like they're just building, and we're in the very early stages of the innovation curve of programmability. And look, there's going to be bad things that happen. You know, I say it, but like there, we've seen, DeFi contract hacks. We've seen all kinds of things, which, if this was sort of the official system of dollars in the economy, we'd say, whoa, hold on a sec. But at the same time, the rapid pace of innovation is obviously really, really significant and commendable. I guess I'd love to actually just ladder off of that and just imagine some scenarios and just get all of your perspective on if this changes the calculus, in particular of this question of the coexistence and or integration between the stablecoin world and the central bank digital currency world. So, one scenario, which I think is not an unreasonable scenario, is that over the next 2 to 3 years, there's hyper growth in stablecoin usage, and it goes from tens of billions of stablecoins into the hundreds of millions, or maybe a trillion plus or more, and then all of a sudden it's as getting to a level which resembles the distribution of cash. And there are scenarios obviously where large scale internet firms are deploying this, and obviously there are large scale internet firms deploying this, but that a broad range of internet companies and fintechs and large financial institutions just sort of adopt this, and you sort of have that hyper growth. Does that affect how the Federal Reserve would look at this? Is there a de facto digital dollar at that point that needs to be then regulated differently, the reserve model regulated differently? So that's one scenario.
So much information that to digest. Break that down. You may want to take that back and hear it again, what he's just got through saying, because there's some very important information there. Also, Neha just let us know that MIT began working on CBDCs back in 2016. We are now 2022. 6 years later, we are about to launch everything. In year 7, most likely, we're going to start seeing a lot more central bank digital currencies go live. Universal basic income, hear that, yada yada, right? So we just got 2 more stops, and then we're gonna go ahead and let you off this bus and get ready to jump on part 2. With the last pieces that I'm going to show you here, we're going to take a look at how they are expecting people to lose money, and it's extremely important that there's a competitive nature of dollars and a competitive nature of the utility. And that's the reason for the many stable coins that we're going to have. So I'm going to let this video go ahead and run through. Stay for the rest of it, guys, because it's some great information. It's only about 10 minutes more, but I think you guys are really going to get some great information, especially when it gets down to the last 5 minutes, where it starts talking about software and how all of these protocols are nothing more than software, just as Mr. Wonderful said at the Bitcoin conference in Miami this year.
I'll say something really quick, which is, we started working on CBDC in around 2016. That's when we first hired, we hired our first person from the Bank of England. Absolutely. And, at that point, I think we were hoping things would move quickly, and they were moving very slowly. So it's definitely the case that all of the things you just cited have accelerated this conversation dramatically. Yeah. I think a lot of folks who thought maybe this was 20, 30 years out, not something they had to worry about right now, realized, no, this could be a 5-year problem or less, and that we really need to get smart on it. So that definitely the things you mentioned have been an accelerator.
Yeah, and I'll agree there that with Neha, certainly, I can't speak on behalf of this Federal Reserve System, and our team is a technology team, right? But what's critical for us to understand, and one reason we've launched this is we know that the private sector, like Circle, like the Center Consortium, for example, are building really interesting technologies that we need to understand deeply. And so regardless if they go to a certain asset threshold that becomes systemically important, and you saw a little bit of that with China, right? The public statements by the People's Bank of China, one of the leading reasons to use the DCEP program was because of systemic risk of Alipay and WeChat, right? They thought that there was systemic risk in those two companies. Yeah. And so the Chinese government really had to learn how Alipay and WeChat worked, right? To help build their own system. One thing our team does is we're building our own internal testing environment to put technology like Center's USDC technology or the Libra technology through a comprehensive testing environment to understand what kind of at least technology stresses that would put on themselves internally if they got to a scale of $1. Because we think that you have to understand the underlying technology if that does happen and what kind of systemic risk that would pose, at least from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, well, I think, in some ways we're kind of running two really huge experiments right now. We've got the cryptocurrency world, which is, as you put it, very decentralized. These groups of developers from around the world, all different time zones. It's very hard to get on a meeting together, just writing the software, putting it out there, people running it, people picking it up. It's amazing, right? And we are seeing massive amounts of experimentation and people putting tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tokens and cryptocurrencies into contracts and sometimes losing that money, right? We're seeing a lot of experimentation and variation in that world. And these systems were specifically built and designed to be hard to turn off and hard to regulate and hard to sort of find those points of control. And there's a certain value to that because it allows a certain type of experimentation to happen that maybe couldn't happen in other more sort of like different types of structures. That said, money, especially fiat money, the dollar is not a decentralized good. It's you don't fork the dollar, right? It's not a, decentralized governed sort of a thing. There's the Federal Reserve, there's the United States government, there's, there are these actors in place who created the dollar and thus have control over it. And we need to acknowledge that. And so, I don't think fiat currencies are going anywhere anytime soon. I think that they are still pretty important.
Depends which ones.
Yeah, maybe it depends which ones. They're still incredibly important to people's lives and make a huge impact. And I think it's important to look at that area as well when we're thinking about redesigning this technology, which is, kind of what you're doing with stablecoins, I think. So really, these are two different approaches that have a lot to learn from. Like, we can learn a ton from the lessons of the last 12 years in the decentralized world to think about how to carefully design and architect a CBDC. I mean, that's the idea here. That's why we're doing this, because we think there's some value. So I don't see these two areas at odds at all. I think they work together in order to sort of have that experimentation, have that crazy stuff happen. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, unfortunately, but they're taking that risk, and then learning from that and bringing some of the best ideas from that into the fiat world.
And actually, Brian Brooks, who now is the head of the OCC, talks about, the dollar needs to remain competitive. That there's a competitive economy for fiat currencies, and there's obviously the monetary policy is part of the product, and the sovereign credit and all of that good stuff. But then there's the utility value. Like, how do you build better features? How does the dollar become a more feature-rich currency? And now we're moving into a world where there's actually competition on the utility value of fiat currency when you are now moving to this realm of digital currency. And so you can design features, which is very, cash, what's the security technology or the anti-counterfeiting technology might have been features of a physical note, but now there's like real utility. And this touches on something, again, that Kai, you brought up.
Yeah, so I think there used to be a clear line between, software companies that would provide, software as a service solutions, for businesses to help them do things like manage expenses and simplify accounting. And then you had financial institutions that would help businesses send and receive payments. We're now seeing a trend where software companies are embedding payments, into their workflows to be able to add additional value for their customers. So just a quick example, if you're at a large company and you want to spend $100,000 in AWS, you might fill out a purchase order on a Word doc, email it off for approval, have it land in the accounting department, and then they use their financial institution to make a wire. This is now being replaced by software. There are companies where you submit a request, it's approved, and it automatically initiates, payments. And so this design space of how can you program payments as a feature within software platforms is really expanding. And many companies are using Visa products to do that today. And We're excited to see if smart contracts and digital currencies can further, accelerate that trend.
Policy and the regulator regulates, that's not a negative thing. The spigots of capital are going to flood into this sector like you've never seen. And so for those of us that can invest in it now, you're getting ahead of what's going to be a huge wave of interest when policy occurs. I predict in the next 10 years that crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin, all of this innovation will be the 12th sector of the S&P. Now, why do I say that? Because Bitcoin is not a coin, it's software. Ethereum is software. Avalanche is software. Helium is software. Solana is software. It's all software. And the smartest hands over keyboards today in the world are developing on the chain and bringing innovation to financial services, which in the end is the largest sector on earth.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad! You keep digging! You'll thank me one day.